My name's Lila, and this is a story of how my own cousin tried to erase me from a room I had every right to be in, until the one person she couldn't intimidate walked in, and everything turned. Have you ever been so publicly humiliated that even people who don't know you start looking at the floor? Now, imagine the person doing it is someone who used to braid your hair on family camping trips. We didn't grow up in chaos. Sunday barbecues, matching Christmas pajamas, birthday sleepovers, we had it all. But not every wound shouts, some whisper. Some are shaped like being the background character to someone else's highlight reel. Ariel was the one. The pride of the family. Law school at 22. TEDx speaker before 30. By 32, she was head of PR at a billion-dollar tech firm, Vernie. And she looked like a magazine cover doing it. I wasn't jealous. I was just trained to shrink next to her shine. When we were 12 and 15, I came home with a regional art award. Grandpa smiled and said, "You're getting there." Ariel laughed and said, "She painted a bird. I designed a full charity logo last month." That stung more than anything. 15 years later, I was 30 and nervous, standing in the elevator of Halston and Root, a sleek startup tucked inside a converted Brooklyn warehouse. I'd practiced my pitch, ironed my sleeves twice, and carried a copy of my portfolio I'd triple-checked for typos. I wasn't polished, but I was persistent. Self-taught in design, 10 clients from the ground up, a visual identity for a local women's shelter that caught national press. I had something real. In the waiting area, everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a New York ad. Patent heels, perfect teeth, leather briefcases. I sat on the edge of a concrete bench, neither in nor out. Then the door creaked open, and in walked Ariel. My stomach dropped. There she was, exactly as I remembered. Effortless command. Her navy silk blouse shimmered under the overheads like something straight off a runway. Her dark hair was twisted into a bun, so precise it could have been sculpted. Her heels tapped across the floor, like punctuation. Period. She didn't even glance my way, not a flicker of acknowledgement. Ariel walked straight to the front of the room, gave the panel a dazzling smile, and took her seat with a monogrammed travel mug that practically shouted executive tier. It took me a moment to understand. She wasn't here to interview. She was on the panel. No hi, no smirk, just frost. An assistant came around with a tray of coffee for the candidates, 1 cup each, a courteous, careful handoff. Until she reached me. There was a pause. A glance from Arielle, barely a shake of her head. The tray moved on. No cup for me. I didn't react. Just held my resume folder tighter across my lap, swallowed the heat rising up my neck. Then I heard it. Her voice just low enough to sting. She still dresses like she lives at thrift stores. The woman beside her chuckled politely. I looked down at my blazer. One shoulder had a loose thread I'd meant to fix. It was clean. It was mine. And I wasn't 12 anymore. This wasn't our cousin's attic or whispered digs across bunk beds. This was a job I'd earned a shot at. Then the moderator called for introductions. Each candidate stood, name, credentials, polished anecdotes, Ivy Leaguers, founders. One guy mentioned his TED Talk. Then it was my turn. I stood. My name is Lila Ames. I build things that work for people who don't usually get invited to rooms like this. And for the first time that morning, Ariel looked up. I stood, walked forward, tried to keep my voice steady. Pressurized placed my resume on the table, right in front of Ariel. She didn't look at me. Not once. She skimmed it for half a second, her face unreadable, then slid it to the panelist beside her like it was a napkin. No greeting, no acknowledgement, no questions. I stayed standing, waiting. Silence. I walked back to my seat. It felt colder than before, like the cushion had absorbed the humiliation. Behind me, someone muttered, "She's in UX? Seriously?" A laugh followed, soft, cruel, could have been anyone. I didn't turn around. but I felt Ariel's smirk behind me like a blade tucked between my ribs. I'd worn this role before, not in this building, but in this dynamic. The disposable one. The girl with potential who never quite earned a seat at the grown-up table. I remembered my first paid freelance job, a community platform for a youth shelter. I'd built it from scratch. Wireframes, user flows, front end, back end. One of the proudest things I'd ever done. Over dinner once, I showed it to Ariel. She nodded once, no feedback, no warmth. A month later, her firm unveiled a platform for a political nonprofit. The layout, uncomfortably familiar. The structure, the colors, even the phrasing in the nav bar, mine. When I asked, she smiled and said, "Ideas float, Lila. Can't trademark a thought." But we both knew the truth. And now, here we were again. Greg, a panelist with designer glasses and a rehearsed smirk, leaned back in his chair. "So," he asked, "what makes you think you're ready for prime time?" I opened my mouth. But Arielle cut in. "While I was speaking at a digital equity summit in London," she said airily, "Lila was still uploading her portfolio to Canva." Scattered laughter. The old sting burned up my spine. I didn't flinch. I sat perfectly still, hands clasped, spine upright, calm. But inside, something shifted, something solid. I didn't come here to beg for a seat. I came because I had earned one. So I stood again. Without speaking, without apology, I walked out of the room. Down the hall, past the front desk, out into the Brooklyn wind. 3 blocks later, I found a narrow cafe wedged between a dry cleaner and a boarded-up record store, the kind of place that hadn't been remodeled in decades. It smelled like burnt beans and second chances. I ordered a drip I wouldn't drink and took the far corner table. My resume was still in my hand. A red stamp across the top read, "Unqualified." Not real, just something my brain printed over the truth. I opened my phone, found the resignation letter I'd drafted last week, ready to ghost the last client who believed in me. My thumb hovered. Then I deleted it. Oh, not today. A notification buzzed. It was a message from Coulter Studio. "Can you take a call today? We just saw your shelter UX case study. We're interested. If you've ever walked out of a room that tried to shrink you, or stayed quiet just long enough to come back stronger, subscribe and stay with me." The next part? It's where everything starts to shift. How did it go? My thumb hovered over the screen. I type. Exactly how she wanted it to. Then backspaced. Paused, breathed, typed one word instead. Fine. Then I stood, pulled on my coat and walked back. Back through the same glass doors, past the same over-designed lobby, into the same building that had just tried to shrink me into silence. The receptionist blinked when she saw me. "I need to speak with the panel again," I said. She hesitated. "They're reviewing candidates right now." I nodded once. "That's why I'm here." She studied me for a second. I don't know what she saw in my face. Resolve, maybe something more ancient, but she picked up the phone without pushing back. 10 minutes later, I walked back into the conference room. Chairs creaked as heads turned. No one smiled. Greg leaned back in his seat, eyebrow raised. "Forget your pride on the way out?" Aria let out a soft exhale that was almost a laugh. "You really don't know when to quit." "I'm not here to beg," I said, stepping forward and placing a slim folder on the table. "You left something out." Laura, one of the quieter panelists, frowned. "What is this?" "My actual work," I said. "The foundation of systems your firm still relies on." Greg opened his mouth to fire back. But he didn't get the chance. The door behind me opened again, and Coulter stepped in. No suit, just dark slacks and a crisp white shirt. Untucked, confident, undeniable. Every head in the room turned toward him like they'd just remembered the sun existed. He walked past the panel, past Ariella. He came to me, laid a calm, steady hand on my back. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Only me." Ariel's face stiffened. "Coulter." He didn't look at her. He didn't even blink in her direction. Instead, he turned to the room. Interesting, he said. Some of you seem to know me well enough to CC me on pitch decks, but not well enough to recognize the person whose frameworks you've been repackaging. Greg stood halfway. Sir, if we had known. Known what? Coulter said, voice steady. That Leela's the architect behind the compliance infrastructure that secured your last 2 contracts with us? That her name is on every documentation line you just ignored? He flipped open the folder. My name was there, top right corner of every page. Code screenshots, signed memos, a freelance agreement bearing their company seal. He turned to Greg. Tell me, when did humiliating qualified candidates become a branding strategy here? Silence. Laura flipped slowly through the documents. Her face paled. This isn't in our records. No, I said, because someone made sure it wasn't. Coulter nodded. Let's talk about that. He placed one final document on the table. An internal HR log. The header read, Archived Recruitment Feedback, 2019. Below that, my name. Next to it, a string of flagged comments from a prior application round. Displays resistance to feedback. Would not be a cultural fit. A history of unpredictable collaboration. Each note had a timestamp and a source login. Edavero asked Ariel, her face drained of color. I was protecting the company, she said tightly. We can't just hand roles to girlfriends. I looked at her, calm, steady. The only favoritism here, I said softly, was you shielding your position from someone you didn't expect to keep up. Greg shifted in his chair, but Coulter raised a hand to stop him. Let me ask again, he said to the room. Who here actually read her resume? Who asked about her portfolio, her case studies, her contract record? No one raised a hand. The silence was heavier than any answer. Then Laura spoke. Quiet, but certain. I think we owe Leela a formal apology and a role that fits her contribution. Coulter turned to me. Your call, he said. You want the corner office? I glanced toward the glass-walled suite Arielle had once presided over like a queen. It was still perfectly staged. Empty coffee mug, a whiteboard with nothing real on it. Then I shook my head. I'd rather sit near the dev team, I said, closer to where things get built. The HR director nodded, scribbling on a form. You'll be reinstated. Full-time. Lead strategy consultant. Jeriel opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She scanned the room like someone searching for a lifeline that wasn't coming. No one met her eyes. Security was called. As she was being walked out, she turned back one last time. You really think you're better than me now, just because he picked you? I didn't blink. No, I said. I just finally stopped standing in your shadow. I moved into my new space a week later. No glass walls, no skyline view. Just a sturdy desk nestled beside the engineers, where keyboards clacked like heartbeats and ideas became real things. I found the resume they'd torn up, taped it back together, not as a trophy. It's proof. Proof that I'd been overlooked, scratched out, dismissed. And still, returned. Above it I pinned a note I'd scribbled in a notebook 3 years earlier, back when rent was late and hope felt expensive. No one sees the quiet builder until the building outlasts the storm. 2 weeks later, a young woman passed by my desk, holding her resume like it might collapse in her hands. Our eyes met. She didn't smile, but she paused. I nodded. She stepped into the room. Later, she found me. They called me back, she said, for the role you said I should apply to. Smiled. You deserve it. Her grip on the resume shifted, just slightly, but her posture straightened, shoulders back, chin lifted. Just enough to see something quiet and solid settle inside her. And maybe that was the real ending. Not revenge, not titles or corner offices, but something harder to earn and far more lasting. Freedom. Freedom from silence. From waiting for permission. From dimming yourself just to make someone else comfortable. Ariella used to say I'd always be beneath her. Turns out, I just had to stop standing in her shadow. If you've made it this far, thank you. Truly. Telling this story meant reopening wounds I thought had scarred over, and maybe they had. But sometimes healing requires being witnessed, so if something in my story stirred something in you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a comment, not just for me, but for the next person reading, the one who hasn't found their voice yet. What would you say to someone who's been dismissed, overshadowed, or underestimated? What would you say to me, Lila, the girl who finally walked back into the room that tried to erase her? I'm not asking for sympathy, I'm asking for solidarity. And if you've ever been in that position, working quietly, loving deeply, showing up fully, only to be overlooked or made small, let me say this: you are not invisible. Your work matters. Your voice matters. You don't have to be the loudest to be strong. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. Don't wait for someone else to tell you you're ready. Don't shrink for anyone's comfort, not even family, especially not family. The moment I stopped waiting for permission was the moment I stepped into my own power. It didn't come with applause. It came with peace. And that peace is worth everything. So if my story lit even a small spark in you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Not for me, but for the community we're building here. A space for quiet strength, real stories, and unapologetic growth. Because this isn't just my story. It's ours. Good night. Are you ready to speak?